Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Charles Green. I'm part of the marketing team here at Belatrix Software, and I'm going to be your host today. Firstly, thank you all very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join this call. Today, we're going to be discussing innovation and how you can use some creative new techniques to help drive innovation, both specifically within your IT or your technology group, but also more generally throughout your organization. Innovation, of course, is a really hot topic, but the trouble is that it's often not well defined or it's dealt with at a very theoretical level. And it's exactly for this reason that I'm delighted to be joined by both Patrick Millar, the former CTO of Chatham Financial and now the co-founder of Formatic, as well as Franco Fiorini, one of our senior program managers here at Belatrix, who have both played key roles in driving innovation in their respective organizations. So to start with, I'd like to pass over to Patrick to introduce yourself, and also just to give us some food for discussion, to tell us what do you think is the #1 hurdle to innovation in most organizations today?
Hi Charles, thanks for the introduction there. I am Patrick, as you said, and currently working in the startup world, so been doing this for a little over a year now at Formatic, and learning all kinds of interesting things about innovation from a startup's perspective. But prior to this, I spent 10 years at Chatham Financial. 8 years I was the Chief Technology Officer, and during that period of time we grew by a factor of 10. So it was a very interesting growth period. And what do I think is the #1 challenge? Well, I have a good friend that works for a large bank who says that his biggest problem with innovation is that his whole organization and all the risk controls that are in place are actually optimized to kill innovation. And so I think that as we've progressed towards getting better and better methodologies to squeeze out all the available time, that's also made it very hard to have that slack time or that spare time to go and do really innovative things while you're on the job. So I think that's a pretty major challenge.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And now to Franco, would you like to say a few words about yourself, and also what do you think is the #1 challenge for innovation in today's organizations?
Sure. Thanks, Charles, for the introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Franco Fiorini. I have been involved in the software development industry for the last 10 years or more. For the last 8 years, I have been working at Belatrix Software, mostly on the QA area. I'm one of the program managers here at the company, which means I'm in charge of several of our clients' accounts for the last 3 years. Over 2 years ago, with some colleagues here, we have started working around innovation and how we can get a lot of improvements in our company, and we have been facing a lot of challenges around that. But I think the big one was how to get people involved on the process of innovations. And I can detect 2 main factors here. One of them is the lack of knowledge of resources and how to make the idea happen. And the second one is some concerns regarding the intellectual property of the ideas once they could be developed. Well, this is what I'm doing right now here at the company, trying to solve these kind of issues.
Okay, excellent. And I know we're going to discuss that in a bit more detail later on in the presentation. I should mention to everyone listening today that today's session is very open, so we'll be delighted to take questions at any time. And you can ask a question either by writing to them into the web conference on your screen or via Twitter, where we're going to be live tweeting throughout the webinar using the hashtag InnovationBSF. But without further ado, I want to jump right into the content for today. And you can see on the slide that we have a pretty straightforward agenda for today. Firstly, I'm going to discuss briefly why we need these new approaches for innovation. And then Patrick is going to discuss his experiences, including how he set up a hack week each quarter. And then we're going to turn over to Franco to discuss idea markets, what are they, and how you can create your own idea market. But let's first address why we need to look to new methods to create innovation. One of the major trends we see at the moment is that there's a shift away from the central R&D organization to looking to new methods for innovation, that the budgets which executives in the past allocated to R&D are now being allocated to new and to different areas. Now, this has really come about because of the disjuncture between investment in R&D and the returns on innovation. That increased R&D spending doesn't necessarily correlate with increased innovation. And there are countless examples that you go to any business school, you'll find numerous case examples of that. Just one example, for example, in 2011, Nokia was one of the highest R&D spenders in the world, spending over $8 billion every year on R&D. Yet for all that investment, there was very little success. They outspent Apple several times over in the years preceding the iPhone, but they still could not effectively compete. And as a result, as part of this shift away from the central R&D organization, there's going to be much greater and much more widespread emergence of what we're calling innovation enablers. And now there are a variety of different innovation enablers which we can discuss. And these methods are going to include, for example, techniques such as hackathons, which are really the poster child of the new innovation playbook, where you bring together people from very different backgrounds to try and create something new in a set period of time. It's also going to include digital labs or innovation labs to help provide a path around the corporate hierarchy. We heard even earlier in that example from Patrick when he said that the challenge in a large organization are so many gates to get to that next level that innovation becomes very hard. So one way to get around that is by looking to an innovation lab. In addition, you can look to incubators, which help firms take a much more venture capital mindset and help them then invest in startups or potential partners. But also it's worth mentioning data and APIs, which are going to feature prominently, particularly when we see the explosion in the availability of data, particularly open data, and also the availability of APIs, which make it much more possible to create new products and services at a fraction of the cost that they used to. So for example, with a Google API, you can very easily and very much cheaper than you used to be able to create a sophisticated location-based service, which in the past would be financially prohibitive. But it's also going to include the use of specific innovation tools, such as those which help organizations create so-called idea markets, where it's possible to delve deeper into the collective knowledge of the organization. And again, as mentioned, we're going to talk in more detail about such tools later on in the webinar. Now, so we really see that there are four main reasons that technology and business leaders are looking for new methods for innovation. Firstly, that they help spur rapid prototyping and development, that time to market continues to be critically important, and each of these approaches helps companies rapidly develop and prototype new products and services, which can then be iteratively improved. And again, they represent ways to get around the stage gate approach to innovation, which is so common in large organizations. Secondly, that they have a significantly lower cost than centrally funded R&D. This lower cost, of course, particularly when you compare that to the significant amounts of money which many organizations have spent on their R&D efforts in the past. Thirdly, that they help foster creativity by bringing together very different and disparate perspectives, particularly in the case of hackathons, where you bring together people who wouldn't normally work together, whose actual day-to-day job has very little to do with R&D. You can create new ideas much more rapidly. And finally, as mentioned, you can take advantage of the increasing availability of data, where, again, previously inaccessible data is now much more accessible than it used to be. But all this is very well in theory, but to understand how these innovation enablers are really being used, I want to turn over to Patrick now to talk about some of his experiences and how he has taken some specific steps to really drive innovation in the organizations he's worked with.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk through this. So perhaps if we start off with the background on Chatham Financial, where I used to work and lead the team. As I mentioned earlier, during the time I was there, we went from a small advisory-only firm to a significantly larger 300-plus person firm, roughly a 10x growth curve that we went through. And we went from having just a very, very small technology team to having a substantial global team where we were well into the size where you have some significant challenges managing multiple projects and multiple teams from the US to Europe to our nearshore partners in Latin America. We were an early adopter of some of the more popular methodologies now, so we used Agile for 6 or 7 years by the time I left last year, and we'd also adopted Lean for product management. So we were using highly flexible, what would be considered optimal methodologies in today's world for focusing on the right products, focusing on the right development work, and making sure that we were minimizing waste. But as we grew through this, we came across challenges where we realized that we needed to actually take a different approach when it came to wanting to tackle highly innovative projects. So going on to the next slide here. So this slide builds through our path to what we called Hack Weeks. And I talked about the development or the growth of the company. And there were two parallel growth paths that happened here as I look back on it. In terms of the business teams, originally the advisory teams were very much generalists, and as we grew bigger and added specializations, they became highly specialized teams serving specific market sectors. So for example, we had one addressing the financial institutions market, one addressing the private equity market, so we dealt with some of the largest private equity funds out there. One also focused on the large commercial real estate players, the large REITs. And they were excellent, developed very deep knowledge of those industries. And we developed very orderly, very detailed product backlogs for each of those and progressed through those. Similarly, as we grew on the technology side, we went from a small group of generalists to a much larger group broken into sub-teams. And as that grew, we ended up having technical specializations. So we had a much deeper focus on the quant space, on the database administration space, on different tiers in terms of application development, so front end versus middle tier, things like that. On the business side, we found many, many great ideas being generated, but only a small pipe because of the orderly process that we were going through. And similarly, on the technology side, because we had got so good at the Agile and Lean methodologies, we found that we had pretty much squashed every spare second out of the day working on the next most important thing from the product backlog. But the challenge was we felt it took us away from the old grassroots feel when we started out. You know, how do we really fuse these two together? So we had run into some of the problems of scale in terms of specialization on the business side, specialization on the technology side, and how do we go back to that environment where we can push these folks together and say, hey, let's try something. Let's try this new idea. Let's try this new technology. Let's see what we can do here. So our opportunity there was to say, okay, how can we just kind of put things on hold for a brief period of time on a regular basis and just hack at these ideas? So we decided to try quarterly hackathon type events, and we ended up calling them Hack Weeks. So once a quarter we would do this where we would just get together, share ideas, prototype, iterate on them, experiment, have fun, kind of like it used to be when we were smaller. I'm sure there are lots of companies that yearn back to those days. And then based on that knowledge, do a quick reassessment and say, okay, are we working on exactly the right things, or is there some new innovative technology that we can bring in to help accelerate projects or reprioritize things? So that's the history of what we went through. Going into the details of how we did that, going on to the next slide. How we did this, so this was a full week each quarter, And I'll get into the justification for that a little later on. I know that can sound like an awful lot to a lot of people. And we decided that because we needed enough time to make progress on prototyping something, but not too much time that we were distracted from the mainstream development. And we followed a startup weekend format. And startup weekends have become popular globally. And the idea there is that before each week, we would go out and gather project ideas. And this is a great time where Franco will be talking a little later about the ideas marketplace. There's quite a lot of administration in that week prior to Hack Week where you're gathering those project ideas. The teams of people would form around ideas, and this is all bottom-up innovation, where a group of people would get together. They'd been talking about this, so teams would form around those ideas. Those teams would be the ones that pitched prior to Hack Week, and the whole team would then get together, and we had a voting mechanism where we would say, okay, well, which are the best ideas? And let's have everyone get together on this. And this is both business people and technologists. So you had to pitch and sway your peers. And I won't say that there was no attempt at influence and maybe buying drinks or something like that, but that all added to the fun. And as we did that, everybody also got to state that, after they voted, who gets to work on which project. So maybe your project wasn't successful, but you could still get to vote for, okay, so if I don't get to work on my project, here's the one I want to work on. So trying to make this, again, as individual driven, as team driven from the bottom up as possible to keep the energy high. During the actual Hack Week, we went ahead and executed on the ideas. So come Monday morning, people would go heads down. And typically this voting, in that third bubble, this voting would happen on a Friday. And so people would know going into the weekend what was going to happen the next week. And just because of the competitive spirit, they would start going over the weekend. So you really got value for your money in many ways. So come Monday, there would probably, in many cases, already be some kind of framework up for what people were working on. And then we would go into a more regular routine where each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we would have a daily scrum of scrums to see how people were doing. Sometimes they'd hit huge issues, and other times there were huge successes. You just don't know in that sort of highly innovative environment, but it was great to get that feedback working around the whole team. And then at the end of the week, on the Friday, the teams would get back together and they would pitch back on what they learned and what their successes were. And again, sometimes a negative is a positive result. So sometimes you learn that something that you tried didn't work, and that's really important, just as the big successes are. And then the whole team would vote and say, okay, well, which do you think is the best project? Which do you think has the most impact on clients? Which do you think was the coolest technology? Which was the most fun? Pick your categories, but it was great fun to compete in those different categories. So the cycle that emerged from this as we worked on it over time, and we did end up, this is going now into its 5th year, so we did this many times on a quarterly basis. For more complex technologies or ideas, we would spend one Hack Week kind of roughing it out and trying to get a rough and ready, is this a go or not? A second Hack Week would then be when we start to really apply it and maybe get a cleaner prototype, and then after that we would frequently shift it out into production. There would be enough of a framework there where we could say, okay, we've established a good pattern here, now let's go and actually put that out in production. We can scope that and get a good sense of how much time it will take. So shifting over to the next slide on the challenges. I'm sure this is where many people would have questions. So as I talked to this about friends in a number of different industries, their first response is, how on earth did you manage to get approval for that? So one great response is that Chatham remains a very entrepreneurial company, and even though it has taken on more order as it has coped with scale, there's very much an entrepreneurial flavor there, so that helps. But fundamentally, financial services companies don't like risk, so the challenges often orient around, is this wasted time? Which business team's paying for this? Who benefits? What's going on? You're pulling these people away from their main product backlog. What's going on? And the response is that really what you're doing here with a Hack Week type approach, it's like an insurance premium. So you are taking a fixed cost, which is 1 week a quarter, or about 8% of your year, and you're using that to explore potentially high benefit areas. You're also using it to explore things that could be really bad rabbit trails, so things which could cost you a lot. So you're both getting potential benefits and there's cost avoidance there. And it's true that the hack weeks often resulted in pretty significant pivots or changes in development direction, but those were always positive. So either we were able to cut things off the backlog, which we no longer needed to do, or we were able to accelerate things. And for people who are very detail-oriented, that can cause problems because they have to redo their project plans, but it's a good reason to do that. And then finally, the transitions that you really need to do to get here, and I mentioned them earlier. One is that you really need to be an agile shop, so it's worth learning about agile if you're not there already. And if you are there, learning how to do it really well with short sprints. And then also adopting a product management philosophy like Lean, so that you have a methodology there where you can pivot quickly and understand how to do that. So these two methodologies, they do squeeze all the efficiency pretty much that you can get out of the system, but they also allow you to pivot very quickly when you've gone through an innovation cycle like a hack week. So going on to talk about some of the successes. So some of the bottom line and top line benefits, all businesses ultimately are people businesses, and people were absolutely core to who Chatham was, both on the consulting side of the business, the advisory side, and then also on the technology side. And having a program in place like this quarterly hack week was just fantastic for attracting high performers to the team. So once, as we were interviewing people, once people heard about this, they said, wow, this is so enlightened. This fits completely in line with how I want to work, how I want to show, how I can be innovative, how I can develop myself. Huge magnet for attracting talent. And on the cost avoidance side, if you aren't doing something like this, then you are going to face attrition problems. People will leave to go and do interesting things somewhere else. And anybody who has hired a lot of people, and I fall in that category, will tell you it's very expensive to use recruiters to find people. And you can easily pay more than 20% of the first year's salary, and that adds up quickly if you are churning every couple of years, and heaven help you if you are churning even quicker than that. So that 8% cost of 1 month a year starts to look pretty small when you're worrying about 20% first year salary recruiting costs. So those are the bottom line benefits. The top line benefits are that innovation delights clients. Clients love it when you come to them with new technologies or adaptations to your business that make life easier for them and make it easier for them to generate revenue on their side. So, and some of the specific quotes that we used to have from clients, you could track those directly to some of the technologies that we implemented based upon these hack weeks that we did. And even better, you can take that a level further. And once you get this process down and it acquires some stability, why not invite clients into this process? Now, you need to be careful doing that, of course, but every company knows who their forward-looking, innovative clients are, and that can be a massive asset to say, hey, would you like to participate in something like this? And bring their ideas directly into the mix. So bottom line there, of all the different projects we worked on that we iterated through in these hack weeks, I would say that 90% plus of those had a positive impact on the main branch on our production code. Now, there always will be ongoing challenges. I've talked about all the benefits here, but any company with good management, there will be a push for, or a strong desire for, control over how can we make this more in line. And innovation is a bit of a wild and a woolly beast. It's more about creating the right environment in which you can innovate than it is about controlling. You can't have quotas on, we must be 10% more innovative next year, but you can say, let's put the right environment in place so that we can be innovative. And the last bullet on this slide, you really need to be careful to avoid creating innovation backlogs. Each one needs to be fresh because the technology and the business marketplace are changing so fast. And we certainly found this looking back from one quarter to the last. There would be brand new things, fresh things every quarter where you didn't anticipate it the previous quarter. So you want to avoid the backlog approach and have a fresh set of ideas each quarter. And there's never any problem generating those ideas. So I think that just about wraps it up from me. And talking about the administration of gathering ideas and keeping things fresh, that's probably a good segue to hand back to you, Charles.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Patrick. It's fascinating to get these insights. And actually, we have a question from the audience, which is regarding how closely aligned were the projects with your business, and actually, perhaps closely related to that. I mean, I have perhaps a follow-up question to that: is how much freedom did people have in the Hack Week, and how much did you guide them on what they could work on?
That's a very interesting debate, and we found ourselves having that debate every single time we did one of these Hack Weeks. So you would end up with a set of business ideas which were often not connected to a particular technology, and a set of technology ideas which were not connected to a particular business opportunity, and that allowed us some freedom to try and line those up. So from a technologist perspective, they'd say, hey, I would really like to try out technology X. I think we could really optimize this part of our user experience using this technology. I would really like to try that. And they're not so worried about what the application is, but they want to try the technology. Then on the business side, there may be someone coming along saying, I'd really like to try and enhance this application to do this for our clients. This is what they're asking for. And so you can line those two things up together, and it's a win-win for both of those folks participating on the team. So we usually ended up with pretty good alignment where you could show the business application and there would also be an interesting technology piece. Having said that, each Hack Week there would also be some projects which were just technology or maybe just sort of internal process type orientation. Both of those are important areas of innovation as well. But the alignment generally was very good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And a part of that, what you mentioned earlier on during the presentation, was that the part of collecting the ideas in preparation for the Hack Week. So I think this is an excellent segue into the next part of the presentation, where we turn over to Franco to talk about idea markets and what exactly is an idea market and how do you create one. Franco.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Charles. I would like to start just going a little bit deeper about the concept of an idea market, because sometimes people think, well, what is an idea market? It is a product, it is a tool, it is a process. Well, the answer is not that simple, but I can define the idea market as an environment where all the people can contribute with ideas, new ideas, and the companies could detect new business opportunities. An idea market provides a framework where new products or services could be emerged, and allows the idea market also allows all the employees for a company to collaborate on these ideas. The market is not just a product, it's not only a tool, it's a mix of processes, some tools that could help on gathering the ideas, but mostly it's an open space for innovation. And I remark this as an open space because we should allow all the people at the company to collaborate or to share ideas. Because maybe you can have at your company your own R&D lab or a specific budget for only a bunch of people that are focused on innovation or creating new products. But the idea market enhances this kind of R&D labs, because you can keep your dedicated budget for the lab, but also have all the company trying to share new ideas that then the R&D lab could start exploring deeper. So we can move to the next one. Some of the benefits of having an idea market in place are, for example, you can develop new markets or businesses because you can come up with new products, new services, or explore new verticals on the industries that maybe you have never been working on. You can also work on continuous improvement of your own processes. Maybe you can start gathering ideas about how to improve the current process that you are applying on your industry, or maybe you can use the idea markets as a suggestion box from your employees to get a better sense of what they are needing, what they are expecting for your company. Another important benefit is that you get more client engagement here. Maybe you can have partnerships with your current clients or new ones because maybe you are getting good ideas from your people, but maybe your company is not on that business line. So you can get a partnership with some other companies that they are producing that product that you need to develop your idea. But also you can get a better service for your current clients through collaboration. As Patrick explained before, most of the clients are always willing to hear what will be the best way of doing better products or businesses together. And finally, motivation. Motivation is one of the other key benefits here because you are engaging the whole company here, and that will increase the sense of belonging of all of the people of the company, because each of them can feel that they are contributing to make a better company because they are being heard by the company. So how you can get an idea market working at your company? Well, I try to give to you here just simple tips to get the idea market working at the company. We have applied most of them on our own idea market here at Belatrix, but the first one is just keep it open for everyone, because you don't know who can come up with a really good idea. Maybe that guy or girl was not really close to R&D labs, or they were not working on that specific line of services. But you know, people are facing real problems every day on their lives. They are trying to solve those problems with most of the time with new technologies. So they could bring a really good enlightenment here on how to get new products or services. So listen all of them. The second thing is get a good bunch of ambassador or evangelists. These people are the responsible of getting everyone, well, one of the responsible of getting the rest of the company engaged on this innovation thinking. These are people that they are always close to technologies, they are close to people as well, and they are trying to spread their voice about innovation and trying to encourage all of the colleagues contributing or sharing the ideas, because some people sometimes are shy and they don't want to share ideas because they think, well, I'm not smart enough to launch this product. I don't know how to do it. The rest of the company won't listen to me. Well, that's why we have this set of ambassadors trying to encourage people of sharing ideas. The next tip is gamification. Well, this is the key here in order to have an idea market working, because as I mentioned on my presentation, one of the challenges that we have been facing is how to keep people sharing ideas and participating in this kind of processing or events. Well, we use gamification and we got a lot of success with this because people are always interested on getting kind of challenges or rewards about doing things. So gamification is one of the keys for the idea markets. Another key is people's contribution. You can have the best tool, the best process, but if the people at your company don't collaborate with ideas, well, failure will be the final result here. So let's always try to keep all the people engaged. And finally, keep moving. It's not just gathering idea. We do need to work on make the ideas happen. And that's why after applying the idea market, when you get good ideas shared by the market, by the tools, you need to keep working around them. You need to do something to make that idea a real product, a real service. On this area, you can apply different techniques like hackathons, hack weeks, like Patrick mentioned it before, doing some code fairs, or send those good ideas to the labs that they will start working, developing the new products, or trying to get investors for apply or for funding those ideas and create new products. I would like to talk a little bit about how we apply these kind of things at Belatrix and how we develop our own idea market. What we have been doing here is just trying to focus the innovation in different topics. So we have different campaigns to approach several niches of innovation that we were looking ideas. So, for example, we have campaigns for Internet of Things, mobile apps, or to improve some processes internally. But we also keep a campaign open to any idea that any people can share. It's not just that the innovation is always focused to a simple subject. You can have different campaigns, different subjects, but also an open one for if somebody can come up with an idea that doesn't match with one of the open subjects. As I mentioned before, we apply gamification through kind of a game of investment. So people at the company has a certain amount of points that they can invest on the ideas published. So the idea with most points at the end of a campaign is the winner, and then the owner of the idea and the people that have invested on that idea will receive benefits or extra benefits. That's one of the ways that we have people engaged and they keep participating on this process. They are not just sharing the idea and that's it. They just keep improving the idea, not only by investments, but also by comments or by contributions to the idea in order to get a real thing after the idea. So this is the next thing. We use people's contribution in order to get better ideas. I mean, because at the beginning, people are sharing just a rough idea. They are not detailing so much about how to get that idea, that new product or service working. They are just shooting the idea. And the rest of the company here is helping through comments or collaboration about how to improve the idea, how to get that idea working in the real world. They will contribute with comments about how to implement the idea, how to, or maybe if the idea has already developed by some other company or by some other people, or some tweaks that they can do around the idea in order to get a good product at the end. But also they are collaborating with the selection of the best ideas. We are doing this through the investment process that I explained before on the gamification part, because people are investing their points on the best ideas or the ideas that they think it will be a good product or services in the future. So they are not only contributing to improve the ideas, they are also helping us to detect the best ideas. Next steps are recognition of the innovators and the good ideas through rewards, through maybe giving them some t-shirts that they can wear, and we can identify the innovators or the good thinkers at the company, and also doing some events like hackathons or code fest where we are trying to develop those best ideas and we are helping that people to make their ideas happen. So, well, here we have some events that we have been doing in the last 2 years. We have been doing hackathon events in several points of the world, like Mendoza, Lima, and we are also planning new events at Buenos Aires soon. But we keep people working around those ideas, and we are not keeping our own people at the company working on this. We are also inviting external people because we can get ideas from them too, and we are also helping to develop those ideas for the community. So that's it so far. I'm open for question if you have any one.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Franco. And as Franco mentioned, this is now a time where we kind of open up for questions. So I would like to remind everyone who's listening that you can ask a question either via Twitter using the hashtag InnovationBSF, or you can ask a question using, just type it into the webinar software on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. But whilst we're waiting, one of the questions which often comes to mind with these idea markets, Franco, is that there's, if you think about a typical organization, perhaps say you have 5,000, 10,000 employees, and you simply get overwhelmed with ideas. So what is perhaps your recommendations, or what is the process that you have in place for evaluating and prioritizing those ideas so you don't being completely overwhelmed with different ideas?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing is that it is not mandatory, but it's a good thing to have a tool for managing those ideas. Because, I mean, you can have just a single person trying to collect all the ideas and start spreading or distributing the idea through the whole company, but without a tool, it's really difficult to handle that. So first one is to have a good tool that allows you to manage that amount of ideas. Then you can try to segment some sections of some areas and you can invite people to collaborate on some of these sections. But as I mentioned, I would like to keep that open to everyone. But yeah, just having specific areas where you are looking for good ideas on innovation, you can handle a little bit better that mess. And also, you need to have a good team of reviewers or the ambassadors that I mentioned before in order to help you on selecting the best ideas, not just filtering them, it's just trying to detect which of them will be really good products or the things that you are looking for and trying to make them more visible to the company, or I mean to the rest of the people at the company. So these are some of the advice about how to handle these kind of things.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And we have a question from the audience now. This is for Patrick. That's asking about what were the early hack weeks like? Can you perhaps give us some context to what they were like? Was it an easy start to get going? Were there particular challenges you had to overcome?
Yeah, that's going back a little bit now. Like I said, that's probably almost 5 years ago. But in the early hack weeks, this was definitely something which the folks on the technology team figured out first. They generally got that notion of, okay, let's just go and do something like this for a week, and we are convinced that something good will come out of it. So certainly the folks on the business side needed more convincing. I think that the general market and just the technology business world has moved on since then. So it would probably be different if you were starting now, because people are more familiar with a startup weekend type format. They're more familiar with idea incubators. So if I say to somebody now, well, it's like an idea incubator. You know, we're taking something, working intensively on it for a week. There's a much clearer aha moment for business people. Back then, that was a much tougher sell. But we decided to take the risk and do it anyway. So early on, definitely things were more technology oriented, but many of those early projects, they quickly gathered fans because people started to see what was possible. And then the folks on the business side, they started coming forward and saying, so, you know, how about this idea? How would I get this in the mix? And it was another piece that emerged there was they had to, you know, both technology and business folks had to learn how to team up on ideas, because if somebody just pitched from the technology side, they wouldn't necessarily get votes from the business because it would look like technology for technology's sake. And similarly, if it was a business person just pitching without being able to appeal to the technology folks, they would think it was boring. So the early Hack Weeks taught us more about how to be collaborative, and we very quickly arrived at that state where people realized, hey, this is something where we get to work together, and this is a real creative fusion of ideas. So hopefully that answers the question. It was a little bit bumpy starting off, but very quickly got to a good place.
Mm-hmm. No, it's fascinating. I guess it's also in many organizations there is that split between the business side and the technology side, and that's clearly what you're saying there is one of the benefits which came out of that it helped foster that collaboration between the two, you know, between the business and the technology.
That's right. It was the separation there was the unintentional result of us having to specialize in both areas of the company. So getting greater technical depth and also greater business specialization. So there would be pieces of the technology organization which folks on the business teams just wouldn't connect with because they were dealing with middle tier optimization or database administration. They might have related to the front end developers, but not necessarily to the other folks. So bringing everybody together in a Hack Week really helped to just cross-pollinate the organizations there and get that collaboration going.
Okay, excellent. We have another question from the audience coming, which is about who owned the IP for the Hack Week ideas.
That's always a sensitive question in any technology organization, especially when you're looking at highly innovative ideas. We were a small enough organization that the assumption should be, of course, you're doing this on time that's paid for by the company, and therefore the company owns the intellectual property. Once in a while, though, ideas would come up where somebody would say, hey, you know, based upon this, or even outside the Hack Weeks, I'd like to be able to do this as a side project, the famous two words which can mean that people get very tired because they're working on things outside work as well as work. We generally encouraged that, and as long as it didn't impact what they were doing for Chatham, then we would give approval for that to go ahead. And that in turn was another place where innovation would arise, giving highly creative technology and business professionals the right to go away and try some of these things and give them that flexibility that often then folded back into success at the company. So avoiding rules is important when it comes to innovation. And let's face it, if you have highly creative, highly talented individuals, even if you forbid them from doing something, they're going to go and do it anyway. So you're best off working with them in terms of how can we work on this together? How can it benefit all of us?
Okay, excellent. And actually, seeing now, I think we've covered all the questions which which have come in from the audience, and we are nearly at the top of the hour. Do you have any final comments, either Franco or Patrick, that you would like to make to the audience?
Sure. I'll just go back to talk about, again, agile and lean, and especially how agile and innovation work together. So agile and lean in themselves don't guarantee that you will have an innovative organization. What they do is they help you, once you have those innovative ideas, they help you execute well against them, and they make sure that you're always working on the most important thing. So, but what happens is when you develop a big backlog of really good stuff to work on, you might look through the next 20 tasks on your backlog and think, wow, all of these tasks are just fantastic. All of them are going to be great for the client. So it becomes a very competitive environment. How do I prove to you that this innovative idea I have is worthy of going in that next section of the product backlog? And that can be very difficult to do that. So these hack weeks present a great place where you can go and prototype the idea and see, hey, does this really have value? Does it deserve to be in this next chunk of the product backlog? And that was just fantastic, because it meant that disruptive things, disruptive technologies, disruptive business ideas, they had a chance to grow a little bit and be prototyped, and then we could really weigh them up against these other great ideas already in the product backlog. And I see another question coming in there, talking about Scrum being particularly flexible in the context of innovation. Yeah, I'd go back to that again, that Scrum and Agile methodologies are extremely good at making sure that you're working on the most important thing. The challenge being that if you're in a fairly mature organization, again, the next 10 or 20 things on your backlog, you know that they are all high value. And so those are the things you should be working through. And there's the key thing there is that all of those things in the backlog, there's a high probability they'll deliver value. The problem with innovative ideas is that you just don't know if they're going to deliver value. You have to test them out a little bit. There's a high risk factor there. So how do you lower that risk? You need to do something like a hack week in order to explore them a little bit more so that they can compete with what's in the backlog to actually get prioritized in the right place. So that's the key there, is proving out those ideas just enough that they can compete with the established ideas in the backlog. Once you do that, then boom, go crank away at it using your agile methodologies, and that then becomes the next most important thing to do. But the agile methodologies in itself doesn't guarantee innovation. It helps you switch tracks very quickly so you can always pursue the most important thing, but it doesn't generate ideas on its own, and that's where having an innovation process, having idea marketplaces is so important, that you're constantly looking for those ideas.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And Franco, any last comments from your side?
No, I was just listening to Patrick and I agree with him. But yeah, for example, what we have done is applying Scrum methodologies on our hackathon events, for example. But once we had the ideas, then when we started working on those ideas, we applied Scrum methodologies or techniques or some artifacts from Scrum just to organize the team working on that idea. And that helped us in order to get really quick results, or at least quick kind of checkpoints where we can see if the development of that idea was good or on the good way or not, or if we need to do some adjustment on the development process. But yeah, as Patrick mentioned, just being agile is not enough to be an innovator.
Okay, excellent. I think that's actually a perfect way to bring this webinar to a close. So I would like to say a very big thank you to Patrick and to Franco for sharing your insights with us today. It's greatly appreciated. You can see our contact details here on the final slide. So if anyone's listening, if you have any follow-up questions or comments that you would like to make, please do feel free to reach out to us. And hopefully our passion for innovation has come across in the webinar today, so we'd love to talk about it. So do feel free to contact us, and I hope this webinar has brought some some interest, has brought some new ideas to you that you can use in your organizations. So with that, I'd like to say thank you and have a good rest of the day.